Fans of the Horus Heresy, thank you very much for joining me for my latest how-to video. And in this video, I'm going to be building my Sagittarum Guard, which is a conversion resin kit to go with the plastic Custodian models by Games Workshop. And what I'm particularly going to be trying to achieve here is to get a bit more life into these poses, because I've seen a number of people say these models are a bit monopose. So using a bit of heat manipulation and some pinning, I'm wondering if we can breathe a bit more life into these guys and perhaps get some aiming positions. That is the plan. What have we got here? So we have got, so I've cleaned up all the parts, and in each pile we've got a bolt cleaver, like so. And then we've got the corresponding arms, and these are all numbered as well. So for example, here we've got arm number 1 and arm number 1 and arm number 1. So that's a nice, the sculptor's done a great job, or the kit designer, beg your pardon, the sculptor's obviously done a great job. The kit designer's done a nice job here of making these parts easy to match up, are specific. And then I've also got the plastic components of the Sagittarum Guard that we're going to use, and I've assembled these. So we have the legs with the armour plates, and then we've got an assembled torso. There we go, hello focus. Assembled torso, and then also the 2 shoulder pauldrons. Yeah, just noticed that there. That's got a. I don't know if that's a casting defect there. That the plastic's got sucked in there. Or I don't know if that's supposed to be actual battle damage. Not sure on that actually. Oh no, I know what it is. No, it's not a moulding defect. That is where I think a cloak might attach. Okay, that's fine. I'll just need to fill that. So, and then we've got that for all 5 custodians, and also we've got the heads. Come on, focus. There we go. So I've got the 5 heads for the Sagittarum Guard as well. So I'm going to start up by pinning, and then we're going to do some heat manipulation. I'll do them one at a time. We'll work through a few and see how we go. So what tools have I got? So some of the usual candidates. I've got some super glue, some medium thin super glue. We've got 2 knives. We've got a blunt craft knife and a razor sharp craft knife. We have got needle file, usual flat hemispherical upper tapering to a point. A bradawl for spiking guide holes, pin vise with a, I don't know, is that about 1/2 mm drill, quite a thin, fine drill on that, and then some corresponding thickness springy steel wire. So this is this is pretty rigid wire, and then to cut the wire, a pair of heavy duty, cutters. And these are actually, these cutters, these used to be my father's, and they may even have been my grandfather's. And this is made by a company called Maum, and these guys are still in business today. They actually make very high quality tools, and these actually cost about 35 quid a go, the equivalent of this. So yeah, interesting. I found that out a few days ago. I was doing a little bit of internet digging. And finally we've got dusty brush. You always need that when you're dealing with resin. Those are the tools. So let's make a start with doing a bit of pinning first. So I'm going to put a pin into each wrist and each forearm. Then we're going to need a corresponding pin in the upper arm as well. Make a start on that. So just marking out the guide holes, and I'm going to do the wrist first, and then we'll come back to the forearms later. Okay. So as I go along, I thought we'd have one of our little chats, and I've got 2 topics of conversation to touch on today, and the first of these topics is the this is kind of like a brief one. It's just a bit of a, just reflecting on an announcement of the product announcement over on the Warhammer community website for Forge World, which is the re-release or a new version of the Thunderhawk Gunship for the Space Marine. So that's quite a big deal, that, because a Thunderhawk is a signature model. So I'm going to talk about that, and then following on from my last video, I've got a load more Ghost in the Shell stuff to talk about, because following on from that, I had lots of interesting discussion and comments and chat from you guys about Ghost in the Shell and the film. And one of you, Relique, I think I pronounced that correctly, I hope so, if not, apologies, suggested I watch the original anime. I don't know if it was 95 or 97. I did that. I was suitably intrigued by the Ghost in the Shell film, so I ordered myself a copy of that, a Blu-ray copy, and I've watched that. It was fascinating. I've watched it again, and I've watched most of it a third time, well, nearly all, some of it a third time through. Absolutely fascinating film, so I'm going to talk about that as well. Anyway, so let's continue, let's crack on with this drilling. Thunderhawk Gunship. This is I'm very intrigued by this. I mean, I'm very intrigued by this, not because it's a new Thunderhawk, and well, I hope that we're going to see a cool model, and I know a number of, I didn't spot this, but a number of commenters have remarked on some of the artwork in book 7, Inferno, that there was a picture with I think a Sokar pattern Stormbird, but also a Thunderhawk in it, and the eagle-eyed some eagle-eyed commenters saw that it was of a slightly different or a noticeably different design to what's currently available, and that led to speculation that we're getting a plastic Thunderhawk, or what I think is a classic one, but we're not getting a plastic Thunderhawk. However, Forge World are retooling or remaking the resin kit. This interests me because Forge World very rarely go back and redo kits. The last time they did this was when they re-released the Spartan. It was the Spartan. What they did with the Spartan was they redesigned the track unit, so instead of having to stick all those annoying bits of track on, it came as a single piece, and they carried it over from the Spartan and also applied it to the Cerberus and Typhon Super Heavies. So that was good, and it made the kit, it much improved the build experience on the kit. So yeah, I think it's a good thing that Forge World are going back. I mean, the Thunderhawk is an old kit, so it's a good thing that they're going back to this. So I guess there's two hopes there. Firstly, they bring their latest CAD design techniques to it and 3D printing of models. And secondly, they bring some of the newer thinking around kit assembly design, which, you know, I recently talked about with the Karaknos tank, which really impressed me. So yes, that interests me, and it gives me hope that we may see, will we see Forge World start to revisit some of their older kits in the Heresy line to bring them up to a newer and current standard of kit design, you know, and well, for me, from my own experience, I would like to see them revisit the Land Raider Armoured Proteus, which I don't think is a particularly good kit. And, you know, from looking around the community and reading people's opinions, a lot of people have got quite a negative opinion of the Fire Raptor kit as well. So, you know, is that another one that would benefit from a redesign? Yeah, interesting that, you know, obviously the Thunderhawk is an iconic model, so I'm sure there is excitement just purely in the fact of a new one of those coming along. But does this signify a revisiting of earlier models to redesign the kits and bring them up to the latest standard? So yeah, interesting, very interesting development from that point of view. So we shall see what happens there. The Warhammer community post was vague as to what you might call a release date or a deadline for this. So we've not actually, we don't know when that is yet. That's the two wrists, the two forearms done, so now do the two hands. Very intriguing. You know, is this perhaps going to be a cheeky early release at the Warhammer fest at the end of May. Or maybe, could they even go for a release at Salute, given that are they getting into the habit of using these big independent gaming events to get new stuff out there, as they did at Adepticon with various bits of news? Possibly. Things are definitely, things have seemed to be different at G-Dub's World since Roundtree took over as CEO. Well, they don't seem to be. They are different. There's lots of changes apparent. The change with the community engagement being first and foremost. So yes, intriguing stuff. So, yeah, new Thunderhawk. Right, that brings me on to Ghost in the Shell. So, Ghost in the Shell. So, in my last how-to video, when I did the Kragnos magnetisation, I talked a bit about the 2017 film that's currently at the cinemas, starring Scarlett Johansson in the lead role of the Major, and just reflecting on my experience of going to see this film, and I really enjoyed it. Anyway, so you guys, so e.g. Reliquie or Reliquie, said, "Oh, leaky cheese." Well, that's you didn't actually say that. You put it in a more useful way. You did say, watch the original anime. It's really good. So I got myself a Blu-ray copy, and I've done that. I've watched it again. What a fascinating film. Yeah, a very intriguing film, and I appreciate the recommendation, because I've really enjoyed that, and I've really enjoyed it for a number of reasons. I enjoyed it because it's a very impressive piece of anime from an artistic and technical viewpoint. It's very impressive, but the story, it was only when I watched it the second time through. So I watched it the first time through and I thought, okay, that's all right. It didn't blow me away like Akira did, which is, Akira was released in 1988, so a little bit earlier than Ghost in the Shell, but it's definitely of the same generation. It didn't blow me away in quite the same way Akira did first time through, but I kind of the animation did. The animation was brilliant, but I kind of watched it and I thought, I need to watch this again to get to grip, to fully understand the story, which I did. And when I watched it the second time through, that's when all the really fascinating inferences leapt out. So I'm going to talk about some of the themes that I picked up in this. So that's the first thing I'm going to talk about with Ghost in the Shell. The second thing I'm going to talk about is perhaps a topic which is seen as being controversial, which is actually going back to the current live action film, which is around the various reports in certain media outlets that criticising the film to say that it has, in the casting of Scarlett Johansson as the Major, it has whitewashed the film. So I've also got some observations on that whole story, having watched the original anime. So I'll come back to that. So that I'll talk about that secondly. Yes, that's the second thing I'll talk about. Ghost in the Shell themes. First, I guess the thing that really fascinates me with Ghost in the Shell is the religious symbolism of the film, and how fundamental that is to the plot line. And in particular, when I say religious symbolisms, it's a piece of Christian scripture that is significant, and this is a passage. So I'm not trying to sell you religion here. I'm just explaining what it is, and it's a passage from the New Testament, and it's Corinthians, and it's what is it? I wrote this down. 1 Corinthians chapter 13:11 to 13:12. That was it, right? And this is the Major recites the second verse of this, so 13:12, in the scene towards the end of the boat scene with Batu, after he goes and joins her on the boat. and she just says, for now we see through a glass darkly. That really caught my attention second time through, and it made, the first thing it actually made me think of was a Philip K. Dick novel. Philip K. Dick is one of my favourite sci-fi authors. I have a lot of favourite sci-fi authors, but Philip K. Dick, I'm a huge fan of, and I've read actually most of his work. I think the only book I've not yet read, which I have got, is, well, it's a collection of short stories, but the one I really want to read is A Man Whose Teeth Were All Exactly Alike. What a wonderful name for a story, yeah. But yes, it made me think of A Scanner Darkly, using this phrase, because I knew, having read this book and read some of the background to it, that Philip K. Dick had based part of his thinking for A Scanner Darkly on this verse from 1 Corinthians. Oops, yeah, stuff goes flying. So, there you go, we've now got a little pin in there. Let's test the fit of that on the wrist. That was pretty good, that. Just need that a little bit deeper. Yeah, so that fascinated me, and without giving all the plot away in A Scanner Darkly, it's about a guy. What was the name of the character? Oh, that was it, yeah. Bob Arctor, who's the main character in A Scanner Darkly. And he kind of has a split brain due to using what's called substance D for death. And he's leading this double life and he doesn't know it. And he's also a police agent. He's called Agent Fred, and he doesn't know that he's leading this double life. But the thing is, his handlers don't know either. And that's because when he's the agent, he's using this thing called a scramble suit, which prevents them tracking him. And that made me think of this Philip K. Dick novel, because it deals with someone who's kind of has this split personality, but he doesn't know it, and also his ability to pass unseen. It made me think of the character of the Major in Ghost in the Shell, because she's kind of, well, in Ghost in the Shell, and spoilers, there are spoilers in this chat, she's kind of like, almost like a half, and one half of something, one half of a personality almost, or a being, and the other half is that of the puppeteer. And it just made me think of that split. Right, I'll pause. So yeah, that split. So I thought of The Scanner Darkly, but then I thought of more. Anyway, so quick little pause. So I've pinned the wrists. See that? And must have been feeling a little bit random there. So I've done one on each part. That might actually help, having a bit of variety there. Make it easy to fit. Right. So if we now get the Custodians torso. So we get a fairly neutral pose, don't we? Right, what I'm going to do now is going to put some little pins into the shoulders, because I want that to be held more firmly, and then we're going to heat the arms up and try repose this to get that variety in. I thought of The Scanner Darkly, and I went away and I fished the book out, read a few bits in it, did a little bit of reading about, and yeah, I thought, oh yeah, there's definitely a bit of a link there. And if you've not read A Scanner Darkly and you're interested, it's a really good book. I mean, as I say, I'm a massive fan of Philip K. Dick, and it's difficult to pick favourites out, so I've got so many I like, but A Scanner Darkly is certainly a really great novel, and it is as a lot of his books are, it's such a mind-bending story to get your head around, a bit like Ubik as well. Yeah, well worth the read. So I read that, and then another comparison sprung into my head, and and this was actually around another book. But this time, the book was a much older book, and it was actually Lewis Carroll's Alice Through the Looking Glass. And of course, once again, we have a piece of literature which is based around these two verses from 1 Corinthians. And of course, and the play on words is more obvious here, isn't it? Because through the looking glass, the quote from Ghost in the Shell, the Corinthians quote, was, and through, for now we see through a glass darkly, and that is interpreted as referring to some sort of mirror. And of course, in Through the Looking Glass, she kind of disappears into this dream world while she's looking in a mirror. And I thought about this, and then I thought, oh, that's interesting. There's all sorts. It just made me think there were quite a few links with Ghost in the Shell. So the first thing I thought about was a female protagonist through the, obviously the main character, or the protagonist, shall we say, is Alice. And it just made me think, when they did Ghost in the Shell, is the Major almost a little bit like, has she been obliquely based on the character of Alice from Alice Through the Looking Glass? So I mean, I don't know, that's perhaps a bit of a tenuous link, but the other thing that made me think about that story is the subtext to it. So Alice Through the Looking Glass, basically there's kind of a subtext of a story, and the subtext is that throughout the story she's playing a game of chess with the Red Queen, and it's like a game, and but she doesn't know she's playing it until right at the end of the novel. She doesn't realise what the game is, and the Queen is trying to, they're in this competition, and when Alice wins a game at the end of the novel by checkmating the Red King, metaphorically speaking, she wakes up, snaps out of her dreamlike existence. And there's a moment like that at the end of Ghost in the Shell, where, a theme like that, because throughout Ghost in the Shell, the Major and Section 9 are pursuing and trying to capture the Puppet Master. But of course the Puppet Master is actually playing a game with them, because the Puppet Master wants to actually be united with the Major. And it just made me wonder, is there a bit of a reference to Alice Through the Looking Glass there, with the Puppet Master being a little bit of an allegory for the Red Queen, Alice Through the Looking Glass? Possibly. It has a different outcome, but I just thought is the Major a bit of an Alice character, and is the Puppet Master, the various events that happen, is that like the game that goes on in the Alice novel? So yeah, that intrigued me a lot. That certainly did intrigue me a lot. I mean, this particular phrase, for now we see through a glass darkly, has been used a lot in literature, and I imagine there could be other comparisons as well, but those are a couple that really did sort of spring to mind. Another thing about Ghost in the Shell was that makes me think the whole thing is actually about this verse, for now we see through a glass darkly, and it made me think about all the mirror symbolism that there is. So it starts with, and the first one that jogged in my mind was when the Major is rising up to the surface after diving. She meets a mirror reflection of herself at the surface as she comes up. And then also, So that was the first mirror symbolism that popped into my head. The second one was the climax of the chase of the hacked guy who was using the bin lorry people. So the guy who'd had his memories hacked out, and the major chases it. Well, he runs away, and he ends up in this I don't know, sort of it's like an open area, but there's like a thin pool of water, and the surface of this water acts as a mirror, and of course, the major catches him and accosts him, but the whole thing, it just looks like there's a lot of reflection of the characters, and it just struck me there's another strong mirror analogy. And then the third one that popped into my mind was right at the end, after the fight against the spider tank. The remains of the Major's cyborg body is set alongside the torso, or the remains of this other cyborg that the puppet master has occupied, and they look surprisingly similar, and they look at each other, and again it's like a mirror reflection of one another. And yeah, I just think all of these are like visual metaphors for this, for now we see through a glass darkly. And of course what that leads up to at the end is, and again lots of spoilers here, the Batu saves a Major, or saves her head, and gets her put into a new body of a child again. And one of the last things she says to Batu is, she says the first part of this Corinthians verse that she said the second part of with the boat, and she says this: when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. And it's a meta, and she was saying it because basically it was a metaphor to say that she'd merged with the puppet master into a single being. And that's very much the meaning of this this passage from Corinthians. It is a metaphor for achieving a state of enlightenment. Oops, focus. There you go. For achieving a state of enlightenment. So it just made me think that the whole film was exploring this idea of achieving some sort of awakening and transcendence. But I was just surprised as to how obvious and apparent this biblical reference wasn't used in it. And I wasn't expecting that. So that was very fascinating. Right, so let's have a look at the model. So we've now got lots of pins. So I've got a pin here. So we've got pins for the shoulders. And we've got pins for the wrists. I should be able to push the whole thing together. There we go. So now what we've got is we've got the whole assembly articulated. So now I can heat it up and do some repositioning work without it all popping apart. So I can keep everything together. I might just need to drill that out a little bit more. No, I'll cut that pin down a touch. I think that's a little bit long. Going to cut this down because I don't want to because it's a hand, I don't want to drill that down any further. I don't want to drill through the fingers by accident. Yeah, so there you go, an interpretation of a ghost in the shell. Literary analogies to A Scanner Darkly, Alice Through the Looking Glass, and perhaps more. And very strong exploration of this bit of of this passage from Corinthians. Fascinating, that about the whole film, and I am going to watch the whole thing again because I think there's even more to I suspect there's even more hidden away in there. Now, talking of other hidden meanings, let's talk about basset hounds. That's the next thing, to the next little interesting observation on visual cues. Right, anyway, let me go get some hot water. Okay, right, so I've got some hot water. I've got like a vacuum flask mug there. So let's think about what I want to do here. The legs and have a little look. The custodian torso, let me just take the arms away. One little thought with these guys. You don't, oh there you go, that's it, right. You don't get, I mean this is a bit like the Contemptor Achilles and Galatus Dreadnought. Although these are multi-pose, you've actually got a very limited range of motion. You can't actually do that much with the waist, and the legs are in fixed position, so yeah, you're a bit limited there, but there's a little bit. I think what I want to do is I want this guy to be, I want to have this guy aiming his rifle. So I'm going to try heat it and bend it up a bit. So let's see what happens. You won't see anything for a moment while I just put this in the hot water. Always a tricky bit this, not to burn yourself. No, it's not that bad, it'd be ridiculous. Right, so I want to bend this arm. If I can. Oops. Not the gun, just the arm. Let's give that another go. See, having the gun as one piece makes this a little bit trickier than it might otherwise have been. Okay, maybe I'll have to just take that off and bend. Do this one arm on its own. Let's try that. That might work better. The other thing that makes this challenging is the Custodians have got quite thick, heavy set armour. So there's perhaps less scope to rebend the arms than you might have on a Space Marine who don't have such thick, heavy armour. There you go. But that's, so what I've done is I've bent the forearm up. Right. So let's see how this looks now if we put it all together again. Let's just do that. Just need to straighten this gun a little bit. Too difficult, it's just actually heating it up and it returns to its original position quite nicely. Basset hounds, right, let me talk about basset hounds. So, chatting with my mate about this film, I mentioned about the basset hound, and basically the basset hound I'm thinking of is when they're interrogating the refuse worker who had his brain hacked and lost all of his memories, or had a load of fake memories put in. The photo where he thought he had his wife and children, but they're not actually there. There's just him, and then there's a dog on a lead, and it's a basset hound. Now, apparently the animator has a thing about basset hounds, he likes them, and he puts them into lots of his work. However, I had also noticed the scene after the boat. It's as if a major had gone into town that day, or into the city that day, and it shows a number of shots where she looks and sees herself in other positions. So she sees herself like in an office or a restaurant, and then she sees herself as a mannequin in a shop display window. But then as she goes underneath a bridge, a footbridge, there's a basset hound looking down at her, and it just made me wonder if they'd used this dog as an indicator of something that is unreal, or a scene that is unreal, and it just made me wonder what she was actually doing in that scene, or what that was actually supposed to signify. So that really intrigued me as well. I need to watch it again to see if a dog crops up anywhere else again. It's very, it's almost that's almost like Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick, for using those sorts of visual tricks, or Kubrick, or perhaps David Lynch. He's another esteemed practitioner of those sorts of visual cues. There you go. So this is actually coming along nicely now. I think about there. Basically, I'm just gonna. This guy will be aiming down his. My idea is he'll be have his gun brought up and he'll be aiming down the barrel. Something a bit like that. Need to stick it first because it's all a bit wobbly at the moment. I think I need to bend this arm a little bit further. Just rotate it a bit more. Let me have a look. So what do I need to do? Right, okay, need to rotate that way. The water, quick stir. Yeah, that's another little thing with that caught my eye and just made me wonder a bit about what the animators were using the dog to signify. Did they just put it in there because they like it, or are they actually using it to tell you as a viewer that something about the nature of what the character is perceiving? As you probably guessed, I like films that do stuff like this. Yeah, Ghost in the Shell, so fascinating, absolutely fascinating, the anime. Another thing I will say though is it did also make me appreciate how the current film, the live action film, has done such a great job of just capturing the look of it and how faithfully it reproduced some of the scenes. I mean, I understand, I can see that they kind of combined elements of various bits of Ghost in the Shell to make this film. I don't think it's bad. And in all fairness, now here's a bit of an interesting, challenging comparison for you. I don't think the way that Ghost in the Shell has changed, the film has changed the anime, is any different to looking at the Blade Runner film and comparing it to the original novel it was based upon. And here we come up again, and for the second time in this video, we come to Philip K. Dick. So Philip K. Dick wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which the film Blade Runner was based upon. Now, if you've ever read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and if you haven't, I would highly recommend it to you. An excellent Philip K. Dick novel. The film Blade Runner, while it does use many parts of the story, it also takes some very, very, very significant liberties with what Philip K. Dick wrote, and substantially alters his original work and completely changes some of the themes of the novel and the outcomes of the novel. But it doesn't make the film bad, because it just shows how you can take a great idea from a book and turn it into something, use it to make something a bit newer and individual, but it doesn't make it a bad thing. I think the same is true of Ghost in the Shell. I just think that, you know, you can see the origins of it in the film, but they've also done different things with it as well. And just like Blade Runner, it's not a bad thing. Right, so I'm sticking the torso on now. So let me think. It's about that pose, that position there I want. So I've actually stuck this, didn't get to use poly cement, so I've made a special effort to use it because we're gluing plastic models. I'm waiting for that to set. These plastic Custodians are absolutely brilliant, fantastic models. It's been a long time. I know a couple of you people asked me when's the last time I built a Games Workshop plastic kit. Well, the answer is ages ago, and these guys are fantastic. I'm very impressed with the kit design and how they've put the parts in together in such a way that you have very limited cleanup to do on the model once you've taken off the sprue. So yeah, top marks to GW for these guys, and the level of detail is impressive as well. I mean, it's not as good as a resin model, and it never will be with the plastic models. You know, it'll take I think a substantial revolution in how plastic kits can be put together to better it, but no, very impressive. So how are we doing now? Are we actually? Well, I guess the first thing is not to pull that off, I suppose. So yeah, the problem with using plastic cement, of course, is it's a bit slower than super glue. Take these off. Hope I haven't got too much adhesive there. Might just take a little bit of that away. I don't know, for me, Ghost in the Shell, in terms of modifying its original subject matter, well, no different to Blade Runner. Or no worse than. Right, this wrist. Doesn't quite, it's not the best fit there. I'm going to cut away just a little bit of resin here to get a better fit against the butt plate, or the butt of the bolt cleaver. So this is the sort of trick you always need to be doing with resin models, just to get them to go together a bit better. Right, whitewashing and Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell has copped quite a bit of criticism over the fact that Scarlett Johansson was cast as the Major, and I don't know where most of this criticism originates, but there are certain circles, and there's plenty of articles, if you go and search around, that basically suggest that I think it was actually as straight as outright to say Japanese actress, or actor if you want, which should have been cast as Major. Now, I'm going to critique that perspective from a point of view of just having watched the original Ghost in the Shell and pointing out what is authentic to the source material. Right, I watched Ghost in the Shell, and when I watched it second time through, one of the things I was carefully observing was the depictions of ethnicity of the people in featured in the story. And one thing that struck me, and I observed, was the artists have been very careful to very authentically and accurately depict people from all sorts of different ethnic backgrounds. So be they Hong Kong people from sort of the Hong Kong area, China, Japan, Caucasians. I mean, the character of Batu looks like to me, it looks like a Norwegian. And if you look at all the drawing, and another one, I mean, the interpreter for the diplomatic interpreter whose brain gets hacked. Well, she looks like she's like a white Caucasian woman with blonde hair. So yeah, and particularly when you look at the crowd scenes, you see this immense variety of people that the artists drew in, and it creates the impression of this city as being a very multicultural and multi-ethnic Hong Kong in the future. Yeah, so the artists were certainly aware of this and carefully did their art did their drawings accordingly. Which then brings me to the subject of the major. Now, I carefully looked at the major, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me what her ethnicity is supposed to be. And I don't think this is an accident. I think this was a very deliberate move on the part of the artists. They deliberately made the major look like, well, I don't know, she's a cyborg. They deliberately made her look like she's clearly human or human-like, but you can't tell where she's from. And that's a deliberate move on the part of the animators to make her an ambiguous character, and also a character who, well, doesn't, basically a synthetic person. She doesn't look like she's from Hong Kong, or she doesn't look like she's from Britain, she doesn't look like she's from Norway or Africa or any of those. She looks, I don't know, just different. And I think that was deliberate, and the reason for it was it's a metaphor for the fact that she has lost her human identity, or lost part of her human identity in becoming a cyborg. So very clever. So when you then look at the film, you can appreciate that. I'll pause there a second. Right, let me just get. So I've glued one wrist, so I just need to hold that in position to get that while that super glue sets. So this is coming together quite nicely now. Taken a bit longer to do this than I originally anticipated, so I'll probably just do the one custodian as a bit of a demo. But we should get to a nice rifle aiming pose with this guy for his bolt collider. That torso's still a bit spongy. That's probably not a bad thing, as long as I don't break it. Bearing that in mind, that the original artist deliberately made the major look ethnically ambiguous, or how about ethnically androgynous, basically there's no real precedent to cast an actor of any particular ethnicity as a major in the live action film. And actually, casting Scarlett Johansson worked rather well when we get to the scene where she meets her mother, because her mother, despite the fact she can't recognise her daughter as her daughter in terms of her external experience or her voice or anything like that, she recognises something within her in terms of her mannerisms and how she looks at people, and she realises, and that is what tells her that it's her daughter. And that's a very clever, for me, that's a really clever reinterpretation of the anime, to say that despite the fact she externally is unrecognisable, there is still something of her original person and humanity that is there, that someone who knew her can recognise. And by having someone who was more ethnically different to her mother, that added and that enhanced that effect of that part of the story for me. Right, so here we go. We've now got the gun in an aiming pose. Not glued the wrist yet, but I've run some glue around the elbows, and then if we do, just do this, just put some glue onto the wrist, then that's fixed. Oops, sorry about the focus there. Yeah, so I basically say the whole whitewash article is is bunk. And if you actually go back and carefully look at the original anime and the clever visual designs that the artists use, I actually think the casting of Scarlett Johansson worked rather well, and was she looked not unlike the Major. So yeah, perfectly good casting choice. No silliness or nothing to answer for there. So yeah, so that's my take on my thoughts on that, which did intrigue me. Right, so let's stick this head on. Of course, I'm now going to have to watch more Ghost in the Shell, aren't I? Some of you guys recommended the TV series version of it, and then I know there's a sequel film, which my friend told me about, and he said, well, if you thought the first one was full of symbolisms and philosophy, wait until you see the second one, so I need to watch that as well. The Custodian aiming their bolt collider. Daka daka. Ooh, right. Need to check my original instructions to make sure I put the pauldron on the right side. So, how's it go? So, eagle pauldron is this side. Is that right? Yeah. So, eagle pauldron goes on this side. Anyway, so, yeah, I hope you found that a bit of, I don't know, I hope that wasn't rambling, but I did find Ghost in the Shell, the whole thing around it, it was an absolutely fascinating film, and there's just the whole sort of subtext to it, and the symbolisms that run throughout it is, it really did genuinely impress me. And you know, it's one of those films that you have to watch. Well, for me, for my level of observancy, I had to watch it twice to even start to pick up on some of these things, and I am going to watch it fully a third time because I think there's more still to spot. Anyway, but that brings us, I think, pretty much towards the end of this little session, this little video. Just bobbed the shoulder pads on. Excellent fit on those shoulder pads. They just slotted on perfectly there. So there you go. So I've now finished. We've got this, so through a little bit using the pinning and also doing a bit of heat manipulation, we've got our Sagittarum Guard in a nice rifle firing pose. Yeah, it is looking pretty cool there, if you ask me. I'm going to bore the barrels out on these bolt clives as well. But yeah, so yeah, awesome looking models though, and a really good kit. Everything, the resin to plastic compatibility is excellent on this. Particularly these shoulder pads are a tight fit and they fit really well. So yeah, no, brilliant, fantastic. Let me know what you think about all the Ghost in the Shell chats. Have you got any ideas? Do you think what I've said is a load of rubbish? I know quite a lot of you have probably watched it more than I have, but yeah, I'll be interested to hear, and if you've got any more other suggestions around good Ghost in the Shell to watch, I'll be interested to hear them. Thank you very much for watching. I will speak to you next time, and goodbye.